What's good, party people? Pete here at Spawn Fly Fish, and it is time to tie some flies. So I have something in mind for the next few flies that we're going to tie. So I don't know if you want to call this a series, but today I'm going to be taking a look at the Low Fat Minnow from Fly Fish Food, and more specifically from Cheech, Uncle Cheech. And this is going to be a little rainbow minnow, or you could also use it as a chum fry, I suppose. The whole point here is that we're going to be tying it jig style and with a bead so that it gets down quickly. So if I'm sure you're familiar with this pattern a little bit. You've seen it, fished it, and the whole idea, right? Low fat, no weight, and they're utilizing the suspension of this fly, especially for bass and different things. So when you do strip it, this larger head and that very distinct taper still pushes water, but with allowing it to look very, very minnow-esque. So great pattern, easy to adapt, right? And that's key. So when I'm looking for a pattern that I want to try or tie, whatever, that's got to be there. It's got to be easily adaptable to the conditions and the fish that I'm chasing. So in the vise, we do have an Ahrex FW551, and that is a size 8, and the 551 versus 550 is simply indicating that it is barbless. For the bead, of course, the Spawn slotted tungsten football bead in hot pink, size 6mm, and about 6 wraps of some .020 lead-free wire. And then I've just got some 6/0 black thread rocking here. And this is going to be pretty simple. We'll try to keep it as painless as possible. Just give ourselves a little indicator of where we want this tail to start, right? And I just barely started going down the shank here. And so that's as far down as I'll take it. Not a lot of space here, but we do have plenty of hook gap. So if we tie this correctly and we have that small minnow profile, this should be just right. So we're going to start the tail with some Marabou, and the tail section of this fly is pretty brilliant in that it's going to slick down in the water and give length to the fly without giving bulk, and it's all going to play in to be part of this taper. And this is a great fly, the ultimate fly as far as, man, it looks like nothing until it's finished and you get it wet, and then it all makes sense. So bear with me, and when you tie this at home, be patient. And don't race to get to the finish. Just understand that it will be correct if you follow the steps. So I got some white Marabou, about a little over shank length, not by much. And let's get this tied in. And I'm just going to work my thread back now since I've got it tied on and solidify that. So before I go all the way up, I'm going to trim out these fibers here on the tag side so that it lines up with the back side of the weighted wire that we use, and all in the name of an even underbody. So like so, nothing to it. All right, so instead of like the normal two-tone tail in Marabou that you would see in like a woolly bug or anything like that, at this point, Cheech uses a little bump of chenille, and for that I've got some pearl Tinsel chenille, and we're looking 3 to 4 wraps, nothing crazy, but it will lift the second batch of Marabou. And again, it's one of those flies, you just got to tie it, trust the process, and see the finished product. And then you will be a firm believer. So I think that's going to be good. Let's just go ahead and tie that off right there. Forgive my fingers here for a second. And that's good. Trim that out. And as far as like difficulty, right? As fly tyers, we always tend to make things a little bit trickier than they need to be, and that's what I'm about to do. So now for our second bit of Marabou, I've got some Fish Hunter Nature Spirit Heron Gray Marabou. Now this section I want ever so slightly bigger than that first section of white, and I just mean a couple fibers more. If I were tying this on like a size 4, size 2, it might be a little bit more substantial, I guess, the amount, right? Because it's a bigger fly. But on these small ones, It's not a lot. It's little differences, subtle, subtle, subtle. So again, trust the process. So I want this second batch of the gray Marabou. I don't want it to go all the way back to that Marabou. I want it to be slightly short of reaching all the way back. And by slightly short, we're talking, matter of millimeter, maybe 2. So I'm going to trim out the butts first here, because at this point I'm grabbing my bodkin. I'm going to lift the Marabou and simply let it fall toward the hook point, and it will sort of split itself. And then I'll go ahead, part those fibers around the point there of the hook, and then I can continue tying down. I'm just going to look all the way around that hook and make sure that I'm tying straight on the top. And then I can finish tying down those butts. There we go. At this point, for my fingers safety and all that good stuff, just switch it back over and we'll keep going. So in the next element, this is where it gets really fun, very adaptive. I'm going for a very nondescript minnow, right? If anything, again, rainbow to chum fry, that kind of just nondescript. Grays, clear, translucent underbody, maybe some color on top. So in that vein or in that theme, I'm going to just use clear polar chenille. And again, as far as making it fun or interesting, or matching whatever bait you're trying to match, by all means, this is one of those times, or one of the steps where you could really get creative and change the overall look very quickly by using amber or red or claret, whatever it might be, and change that fly to make you happy. You tie happy flies, you're going to fish them with more confidence, and you'll be fishing more often. Kind of the point. All right, so there's 3 wraps. Still got plenty of room in here for a veiled laser dub head. I know, giving it away. So let's go ahead and tie this thing off. Some really good sound, strong wraps there. So we don't want any of this coming undone. And I can tell you, this fly gets hammered, just hammered. So tie it well, tie it strong. You'll be glad you did. All right, bring all those fibers back. Let's just create our little lines here for us to see and work from for that head. All right, so just lift those out, bring them under, and get it all kind of looking neat and clean as much as we can. All right, so for the laser dub head, you've seen this done before. Since we've got our ventral or underside showing, let's tie in the bottom. And for that, I've simply got some white laser dub. And so we'll place that on the bottom. I'll get myself a couple wraps here. There's our second one, soft wraps. So now I can look and make sure that this is spread out on the bottom for full coverage of that ventral side. Once it is, I'll give myself a couple wraps back, and nothing crazy again. And then I'll come forward. So when you're doing these heads, if you're having trouble and you're leaving gaps in the front behind the bead, or even if you're not using the bead, it's not how far back you're tying, it's how far forward you're tying this section. So it has to go, if you're using a bead, make sure it butts up all the way with those thread wraps against the bead. All right, so now for our top or dorsal of the main body, I've got some silver minnow belly. And this stuff's great because it does have just a little bit of flash. And I mean just a little. It's a little holographic silver in there. So I'm going to line that up so it matches with our white on the bottom. And again, 2 soft wraps, going to come in, look at the sides, just slide that ever so gently over to match where the white sits, and then I'll do it on my side. And again, now I can tie down, solidify the position, and make sure I've got the thread wraps tight against that bead. And if I do that, when I pull the top back, do you see how it's still pushed against the bead there? Just maintain pressure on my thread and it can't go anywhere. Now I can tie that top back. So now it's veiled, it's not going anywhere. One thing, you just want to make sure it stays where it's supposed to on the top portion of your fly. And once that's done, go ahead and turn it over And now we'll pull back that white, and you see how it stays right there against that bead? That is success, and that's what we want. Tie that down very well. However, I know you guys really, really like to see a hint of color in your rainbow flies, especially. Just keep in mind, when these rainbows are in that tiny fry stage, minnow, whatever you want to call it, they're small and they have almost no color. So you see how little this batch of olive laser dub is, and that's going right on top. And again, I want that to finish along the dorsal side here. So again, right against that bead, veil it back and tie down on top only. All right. So now let's cover up all that goodness. And we are putting eyes on here today. So don't be daunted by a little bit of a buildup here in that thread. You need it, right? There's a lot going on in the head of that fly. And it's also part of what is making this taper that we have to have. So second whip finish here, and I'll get some eyes ready. I'm just going to place the eyes. Don't think I'm going to resin them in, but you guys will understand. So before I place those eyes, I do have water here, and I will show you what happens when you go from this little bit of mess to a wet fly. So pop this out for a second, just prim a little bit. Doesn't take much. Make sure everything's over that hook point where it's supposed to be. Here we go. You really have to saturate this thing. So if you're out fishing this and you're just taking one of these out of the box, don't just start fishing. Make sure you saturate it before you start casting that thing. All right, and that should do it. Let me pop this in. And there you go. That is a slinky, tiny little minnow there, and that is cute as all get out. Look at that taper from the side, top to bottom. That's just a great, great minnow profile. And now that you know how to tie it, change those colors up so that it fits what you're fishing, right? If you're trying to coax huge browns, well, maybe tie some of these in a more baby brown trout kind of coloration and style, and see how many of those trophy browns you can catch. All right, pop this bad boy on again. Once this dries out just a touch, I will come in here with resin, and I'll resin the top and the bottom. I'll do that probably twice with some thin, and then I'll come over the eyes and those two spots with some flow, hit the whole thing, remove as much tack as possible, and be ready to go. So there you have it, folks. My version of a jig style low fat minnow. And again, this is an Uncle Cheech pattern from Fly Fish Food, and it is a winner. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please hit like, please hit subscribe. We will see you guys on the water.